Today, I am going to start with chapter 12 of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, the edition with the Trangu Rinpoche's commentary on this. Chapter 12 is on the perfection of generosity, the first paramita. So the reason why this is the first paramita, this is a foundation, really, training for to be a bodhisattva, to want to benefit all beings and do what's necessary to be able to do that. So a bodhisattva needs a positive relationship with others in order to help them. And generosity is the foundation of that relationship because it brings happiness and satisfaction to others. And in this section, there are three types of gifts that can be given. And I will go into those in more detail, but basically giving some material object, giving them protection, comfort, and then finally giving the gift of the Dharma, which will then allow them to travel a path and attain liberation. So this then is divided up into different parts, the chapter is. The first part is reflections on the faults and virtues of practicing generosity. So the Buddha Dharma, the teachings and the practices of the Buddha are more than just study or devotion, that it's all about the Paramitas, which is all about practice, if we are going to be on the Mahayana. And so we need to have the wish to practice. And if we then practice, qualities will arise, and if we don't practice, qualities will not arise. And of course, we want to have the qualities arise. And on the other hand, we want to avoid having faults arise. So without practice, it's difficult to understand the Dharma and to progress. So there are benefits. First of all, he mentions our animals, that we can see the suffering that animals experience. And we can reduce that suffering in various ways. We as humans have the ability to do that, whether it is to give them food, take them to a veterinarian, give them medical treatment, to perhaps take them to a safer place, and so on. That animals can be an object of generosity. And then if the object is a human being, we all experience the four sufferings that the Buddha taught: birth, old age, sickness, and death. But also here, the book, it mentions excessive activity and frustration. And excessive activity is described as this feeling that you're always in a hurry, that there's never enough time for anything, that you're rushed. You feel that you're not finishing anything either, that time is just passing and you're getting left behind. Sometimes it's called a poverty mentality, that we feel impoverished and just don't have what we need. And it really is mostly we don't have what we want. So that leads to frustration. And it makes us feel that what we do isn't complete, that it's too little, it's not good enough, and so forth. As I said, it makes us feeling needy. And of course, from that comes dissatisfaction. There is a new term in the social media age, and it's called fear of missing out. You see your friends, they're smiling faces and they're having a great time, and you missed out on that gathering or event or whatever it was. And so we have this feeling, human beings have this feeling, and Trungpa Rinpoche says that this is across the globe. It's not just the Western world that suffers from this, that this feeling that we're going to miss out, that we are falling behind. And so this causes overactivity. Sometimes it could be described also as just mindless compulsive activity. So we can look at human beings as the object of generosity, and this helps counter this mentality of neediness, and it reduces this mindless type of activity. And of course, what we're trying to do with generosity towards human beings is give them some kind of temporary relief or easing of this mentality. And so when we give them something, even if it's for a moment, it takes their mind off of what they don't have or what they're missing out and so forth. And of course, we, as the person that is engaging in generosity, we benefit by the accumulation of virtue and merit. So there is a sutra here that he quotes from, and it is the sutra requested by the householder Drak Shul Chen. And this, of course, is a Tibetan word. This is not a Sanskrit word. So the quote is, "What you give away is really yours, and what you keep is not yours." These are the words of the Buddha. The meaning of this is that what you give away brings joy to the recipient, and it brings a merit to the person that gives the object. And at death, we leave it behind anyway. We can't take it with us. And if we keep things out of attachment, they can be a cause of pride, a cause of hatred, and desire, and all kinds of negative stuff. So here's another quote from the Buddha from that same sutra. If we give things away, then you really possess it, because the goodness of the gift becomes inexhaustible. Whereas if you keep it, the goodness of the object becomes small and exhausts quickly. So these are the benefits and the faults. The benefits of practicing generosity and the faults of not practicing generosity. The next section is the definition of generosity. And the quote here is the pure wish to give somebody something in order to help him or her. This wish is not tainted by any attachment for what you are giving. So generosity depends on pure intention. And the intention is to benefit others without being attached to what you give. And so if you give an object to somebody, and let's say they, after receiving it from you, taking it into their hands, and then accidentally dropping it and smashing it to pieces, destroying its value, if you were not attached to it, it wouldn't matter to you. So we want to make sure that we're not attached to what we give, that we don't have strings tied to it, thinking of what they should do with it. It may be, I have done this more than once, that I get a gift, and while it's a very nice gift, I really don't have a use for it. And then I put it in the closet, and when the right time comes, I give it to somebody else. It doesn't mean I didn't appreciate the gift, but I just didn't need it. And so when you give a gift, don't think they have to keep it, they have to cherish it like you do, and so on and so forth. There's just no strings attached if it is done properly. So the third is the classification of generosity. And there are three. And there are, first of all, giving an object to another person. I would say you could also give an experience, like taking someone to a movie with you, or to the theater, or a museum, and so on and so forth. That technically it's not an object, but you're giving them something. And then the second type of generosity is giving protection, helping the person feel more comfortable and at ease. And the third, which is the most valuable, is giving them dharma, encouraging them to practice, maybe explaining a few things about the dharma, and so forth. The next section is the characteristics of each classification. And so there are 4 faults to avoid when you are giving something that has a monetary value to it. So we want to be free of these 4 factors. So the first one is impure intention, that giving a gift to someone else, an object, but wanting that gift to cause pain to the recipient in some way or another. And that could be physical pain, or it could be psychological pain. But if your intentions are impure and do have this aspect of wanting to harm the recipient, that's definitely impure intention. The next is impure objects. And these would be things like, I mentioned in the book, poison, weapons. I added to that category the physical necessities for assisted suicide, perhaps helping with the assisted suicide. So giving things that cause harm. So he says there are exceptions to this, things that appear harmful but are intended to reduce suffering. And he talked about a person that had been bitten in the finger by a poisonous snake, then having a knife and cutting off the finger so the poison wouldn't spread. But needless to say, there are not that many situations that arise in a person's lifetime that would fall into that category, at least not for me. The third impure factor of giving is impure recipient. And that would be if the recipient intends to harm you with the object you're giving them, or if the person is mentally disturbed. And the impure method, which is the last of the 4 points, is giving in a crude fashion. Just being disrespectful. This is especially important when you're giving to the 3 jewels, that you want to be very respectful. Another impure method is giving something when underneath in your heart you actually don't want to give them anything except something that would harm them. And then also then giving something that will make the recipient unhappy or sad. So these are the improper method of practicing generosity. And they fall under the category of impure giving. So now under pure giving, here are things that are mentioned. There are 3. And this is in contrast with the 4 above for impure giving. But and so it is not included in this list of 3 things. The pure intention. It's actually pure intention is put in with the last of these 3 categories. So they collapse pure intention with another category. So here are the pure generosity characteristics here. The object is whatever is appropriate. The pure recipient is the 3 jewels, or anyone that is in need. And the method is pure motivation. As I said above in impure, it was the first that was mentioned, it was impure intention. So here, this is pure intention, this pure motivation. And also included in the pure method is to give with devotion, if you're giving to the 3 jewels, to give with respect, and to give without bias. So those are the 3 points about pure motivation. Now, the second category of generosity is giving the gift of fearlessness. So that would be protection from fear, protection from sickness and accident, protection from any kind of fear. And this can be as simple as just sitting with the person and listening to them. It could be sharing information that you have that you feel would help them relax and lighten their load. Many different ways to offer this protection of fearlessness. And so protection from sickness, from accident, from any kind of fear would fit in this category here. And the third is giving the gift of Dharma, and this is the highest form of generosity, and it brings the greatest benefit. So there are, let me see here, again, 4 divisions here in this giving Dharma. And first of all, the recipient. And so we only give Dharma to people that are interested in it and also have some faith and appreciation for the Dharma. We just don't go out on the street corner and start preaching like a born-again preacher. The second is motivation, and the motivation then needs to be pure without any taint of ego, without seeking fame, success, personal gain of any kind. It's just done out of kindness, compassion, caring. So this is an important point. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail about in the method about how to share the gift of Dharma. The motivation, so I talked about the recipient. Now the motivation needs to be pure without any taint of ego, with being tainted by fame, success, personal gain, that we want this compassionate motivation. And we want to be doing this to benefit the other person, not benefit ourselves, or to sneak in our personal agenda. So the motivation then is to be pure without any taint of ego, fame, success, personal gain. And it's the compassionate motivation, wanting to help, wanting to reduce suffering. The third point is the actual Dharma, and that is don't teach stuff that you've made up. Don't teach things that you really don't know thoroughly. Don't guess at or speculate about the Dharma. So use words that your teachers use. Khenpo Karta Rinpoche, when he would answer this question about how to teach Dharma, he would say that talk about the importance of love, loving kindness and compassion, and talk about Buddha nature. That these things you can easily understand and pass that information on to other people. But the more complicated stuff, he said that be careful, and you don't have to try to explain the more complicated parts of Tibetan Buddhism. Krangu Rinpoche says this: don't try to explain complicated things if you don't have a good understanding. Be direct and practical and useful. Quote, if we speak about what needs to be eliminated, we are able to explain how it can be eliminated. If we speak about what one has to realize, we should be able to show the way to realize it. So be careful about what you say. And I will say this, that it is rare for any of my non-Buddhist friends when we are together to ask me anything about Buddhism. And unless I'm asked, I don't talk about it. So we're not out to convert people, even if we have had tremendous benefit from our Buddhist practice, study, retreats, and so forth, that we're not out to convert anybody, and we have to be careful how we present it to other people. So now the fourth point is the method of showing the Dharma teachings. So he says it should not be an ordinary conversation. And Trangu uses the word teach here, showing the Dharma teachings, and in doing so, we are teaching. So what he recommends is giving people information that will allow them to practice, that will allow them to increase their devotion. And a lot of this sounds like what you would do for a fellow member of the Sangha that is perhaps not as motivated or highly along as you are, and to bring them along. So again, my experience has been when you talk to people that are not Buddhists, say just a little bit and then see how they respond. If they want to know more, they will probably ask for more information. But I will say this, that I have, when I first started practicing, probably bored people to death, and people couldn't wait to get away from me. Sometimes I imagine, because I was very enthusiastic about it, perhaps overly enthusiastic. It's not that we want to hide it, but we just don't want to bore people to death and give them information that they don't have a clue as to how to use it, what it means, and so forth. So he says, and it's best when the recipient of this gift of Dharma has been mentally stimulated, that's a phrase he used, that they feel devotion, that what you have given them will help them progress in their practice of meditation or whatever deity that they are doing, that what you have passed on to them will help turn their minds towards the path of enlightenment. The next section is called increase. So there are 3 ways to cultivate and increase our own generosity. The first one is the power of pure wisdom. And this pure wisdom is primordial wisdom. Yeshe is a Tibetan name. Jnana, J-N-A-N-A, is the Sanskrit name. And it is free of what are called the 3 wheels. Using the power of this pure wisdom, you're able to give without conceptualizing yourself as the person that is giving, the person who is receiving it as the recipient, and there actually being a gift that is changing hands. So these are called the 3 wheels, and you want to, if you are able to exercise your pure wisdom, your yeshe, then you are able to give in a way that it is free of an object that is given, a recipient, and then the person that is giving, being yourself in this case. The next is the power of prajna. The Tibetan word for that is sherab, and it means the best or higher knowledge. And this is a knowledge that you gain from outside of yourself. Trungpa Rinpoche calls it spiritual understanding. You need to have the right motivation, and this will bring the right motivation. We need to have non-attachment to the gift and not having any hope or expectations of the result of this generous action. And that also is accomplished through the use of this spiritual understanding. And then we need a dedication of merit to all beings, and this increases the merit tremendously. The next point is perfection. And what that means is that we're able to combine our understanding of emptiness with that of compassion, because they are inseparable. So perfection, when we combine our understanding and experience of emptiness with that of compassion. And then the final point in this section is called the result. And this is the fruition of generosity, the practice of generosity. It means, according to Trungpa Rinpoche, essentially the ability to give things away without clinging. And combining that with a practice of great diligence and strength, and then the power of dedication. So if you can do that, then you will be of, in his words, tremendous benefit to beings. He finishes out this section by saying, as a result of generosity, you will become very affluent, and you will have more to give. And of course, if you become stingy, then the affluence will diminish because of interdependence. So generosity has to do with mentality, to kind of sum up this section. It is inner, it is not outer. It's not related to power, wealth, and status. Quote, it is a feeling of readiness to do anything we can to help someone by giving him or her whatever they need. So that finishes chapter 12. And now I'm going to start with the next chapter, chapter 13, the perfection of moral ethics. So the first point is, again, as to the previous paramita, reflection on the faults and virtues of ethical behavior. First of all, he goes through what it is not. It is not an order forbidding things or keeping us from enjoying life. It's not punishment. However, if we can stop the, quote, flow of desire towards things, it will get better. That satisfaction becomes possible. If it's unchecked, we chase after impulses and objects of desire and are never really satisfied, at least not for long. That our minds are limitless. And as a result, our desires can be limitless also. On the other hand, since our minds are limitless, we have limitless potential. So it can work both ways. We want to minimize the limitless desire and put some limits on it, and we want to open up the limitless nature of our enlightened mind. So ordinarily, human beings want more objects of pleasure, that it is the very nature of desire to just generate dissatisfaction, discontentment, and wanting more. The quality of moral ethics is Shila. It's a Sanskrit word. It means cool, and he talks about it a little bit. But basically, it's a feeling of being refreshed, relaxed, and peaceful. And so right conduct has that effect. It cools desire. He also looks at the Pratimoksha vows, which are rules of discipline. And these vows, there are the 5 precepts, but there are also vows that are associated with Nyungne, and many of you have participated in Nyungne here. And so these are rules of discipline, but what they mean, quote, or are, quote, if you keep the vows, you will be free of the suffering that arises when you don't keep them. So again, these are not punishments. They are just keeping us from suffering. And these vows, these lay vows, are a source of happiness and goodness that enters our life. When we have control over what we do, when we have freedom to choose. And the alternative is to become slaves to our desire and our objects of desire, slaves to businesses and marketing, slaves to keeping up with other people. My neighbors just bought a new car, I better buy a new car, kind of mentality. And frequently when talking about desire, the Tibetans it comes out in English as being addicted to objects of desire, that kind of attachment. And needless to say, addiction has a very negative connotation. It controls you, you don't control it. So the second section is a definition. Quote, the definition of moral ethics is to refrain from negative actions out of pure motivation. I like simple definitions. So the motivation is to be of great benefit to all beings. With the vows, we make a strong commitment, the intention to not do certain activity. And then avoiding that activity produces great virtue. However, if you don't take the vows and you avoid the activity, it does not generate much virtue because, the next day you could do it and you wouldn't violate any vows because you didn't take them. So the vows make it much more powerful when we behave. The third is a classification. So there are 3 types of ethical conduct. Restraint. The second one is morality of accumulating dharma virtue, and the morality of benefiting others. He goes into the characteristics of each in the next section, and very briefly, moral ethics of restraint is what to abandon and what to avoid. We abandon what causes us to suffer, and we avoid what leads to suffering. He compares it to like telling a child, don't eat this thing, it's poisonous. Or don't put your hand in a fire, you'll get burnt. So simply, these are the 10 non-virtuous actions. The morality of accumulating Dharma virtue is practicing everything positive, which are the 10 virtuous actions. There's some others too, but these main ones are the 10 virtuous actions, and they're basically the opposite of the 10 non-virtuous actions. One non-virtuous action is to kill, and the virtuous is to protect life. So very simply, don't harm others or yourself, and create the causes of your own happiness. That is in this section on morality of accumulating the Dharma virtue. The third is morality of benefiting other beings. So this is the best way to create personal happiness, is to make others happy. It's very similar to giving. That was discussed in the previous chapter, that when we give things away, we get to keep the virtue, you might say. And when we keep things, we don't collect any virtue when we part with the thing anyway. So this is the best way to create personal happiness and to make others happy. And this includes both temporary happiness and ultimate happiness. Then the next point is increase. And this goes over the same 3 points that were mentioned in generosity, and that is the power of pure wisdom, this primordial wisdom, free of the 3 wheels. The second is the power of spiritual understanding. And this brings the right motivation, non-attachment, and not having hopes of results. And then the third power that increases our practice is dedicating the merit. After you behave well and virtuously, then dedicate the merit, because you've created a lot of merit and virtue. Perfection is the next section, and that is to have both compassion and the wisdom of emptiness. Again, this is very similar to the previous chapter. The result is the final section, and that is, the result is that we have restraint, the restraint of ethical conduct, that we have we accumulate Dharma virtue, the morality of accumulating Dharma virtue, and then the morality of benefiting other beings. So very simply, ethical conduct is avoiding doing things that are negative and harmful. Engage in things that are beneficial, and especially to yourself, and especially engage in things that are beneficial to other people. This leads, of course, ultimately to attaining Buddhahood. And the short-term benefits are that all the Buddhas will be pleased, and you will become worthy of respect. The question is that this person gave a lighter to another person, and it turned out that they used the lighter to harm themselves. And she is wondering how this fits in with giving to an improper recipient. Well, first of all, and she says she, of course, didn't know that he was going to harm himself. In this improper recipient, he talked about a person that's going to harm you, or a person that is mentally disturbed. Now, we don't know the intentions of most people. It's common sense to not give somebody something that they're going to use to harm you if you feel that this could happen. But if you don't feel that could happen and it happens anyway, then that could be a problem. But it's not, don't attach guilt to this because of what happened. You're not clairvoyant. We're not clairvoyant. He could have, I believe the person said he went camping. He could have started a forest fire and burned down 100 square miles too. But we don't know what people are going to do. The same thing could be said for loaning a person your car, that they could drive recklessly, drive drunk or whatever, but unless you suspect that's going to happen and you feel like loaning the person your car when they ask, well, you loan them your car. So we have to be careful about who is responsible for who and how much we know, and not blame ourselves for the mistakes of other people if we honestly don't know. If this person had exhibited a lot of bizarre behavior in the past, then it might be this would fall in the category of not giving things to mentally disturbed people. And finally, if you're really feeling badly about the outcome of all of this, then do Vajrasattva mantra, a mala or two.